my name is Reggie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be sharing with you a review of one of the best books I've read this year, and that is Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu. Moxie tells the tale of a young girl named Vivian who is in high school in a very small town in Texas. In her small town, she and a lot of the girls at her school face a lot of sexism, a lot of inappropriate behaviors by boys, and the root of all of this really stems from the fact that at her school, the principal's son is a star football player. This is a small community that values football above pretty much everything else. And so the football boys, due to their status in the community, due to the fact that everyone loves football, and due to the fact that one of the star football players' dad is in charge of the school, get away with pretty much anything they want. I will let you know there are trigger warnings in this book for sexual harassment, assault, discussions of rape. I feel like that's important knowing going in. I really love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, one of my favorite books I read this year. When I got an arc of this book, I pretty much fell over because it was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. Before I get into why I love this book so much, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Tuesday. You should also hit the bell, dude, because that little bell will notify you when I post new videos. Let's talk a little bit about what the story is. The story follows our main character, Vivian. At the point where the story picks up, Viv is just kind of sick of seeing the sexism in her school, in her small town. She's just over it. At the start of the novel, one of the characters in one of Viv's classes says, "Make me a sandwich." He says to a new girl in class who is named Lucy. Lucy is Hispanic. She is a new girl in school and she is super feminist and is not prepared for this. She decides to try to talk to the teacher about, like, that's not cool. Teacher totally brushes her off. And we start to see that this is not just a symptom of some of the boys in the school, but actually a symptom of a systematic problem within the entire community. So Viv is fed up. She goes home and she rifles through a box that her mom calls my misspent youth. Her mom was a riot girl in the 90s, and this box with all this information is so full of songs and zines and things that happened in the riot girl era. And she suddenly gets inspired to make her own zine, which she calls Moxie, and she anonymously distributes in the girls' bathrooms. Throughout the course of the story, more sexist things happen and more zines get published, and the girls start to take a stand. Like in the first zine, the call to action Viv makes is draw stars and hearts on your hands so that you can find girls who are fed up just like you. And then we get into issues of dress code where the boys are saying really disgusting things on their shirt and not being called out, but girls are being forced to change, and the mentality totally and 100% is you can't distract the boys. And we talk about how shitty this is. There's also a discussion of sexual assault. A character goes to, multiple characters in fact, go to leadership within the school and are told, you know, they must have been imagining that didn't really happen. And we see that this issue is so systemic in this system. And Viv continues to use Moxie as a platform, as a motivation, as an encouragement, as an empowerment tool for these girls. And these girls are starting to use the Moxie name on their own to do some other things. We see issue after issue discussed and tackled, and we see the girls start to band together and stand up and take a stand. And I absolutely love the main character's best friend, Claudia, and her character arc. In the beginning of the story, Claudia is just kind of like, you know, I'm a humanist, I'm an equalist, I don't think I'm a feminist. Viv is trying to explain it to her and she's like, no, I don't like that term. And through the course of the story, you see how Viv talking to her and kind of discussing these things with her, her experiencing things herself, the actions that Moxie has done to help kind of change Claudia's viewpoints, and her experiences shape her, and she really comes into her own and her beliefs, and it's a beautiful character. One of my favorite character arcs throughout the book. There are so many good character arcs, but Claudia's character arc really touched me. I was like low-key crying at certain lines Claudia was saying at the end because I was like, look at how far she's come. I really liked that there was some inclusion in this book. There could have been more, but there definitely was some inclusion. There's a Hispanic main side character. Another one of our side characters who's heavily into Moxie is Black. We do have 2 girls who are interested in each other. It's never expressly stated on the page how they identify, and they definitely haven't come out. It's a small conservative town, and Viv does talk about why they haven't come out, or why she assumes they haven't come out because it's a small conservative town. We could have gotten more than just that, but it's nice that that was there. And I will say that in the author's note, Jennifer Mathieu does do a very good job of making sure, she says, if your feminism is not intersexual, it's not real feminism, here's all the people who should be included in your feminism and more. She also provides great resources in the author's note, but beyond the author's note, the entire book is a great resource. Besides the fact that it is talking about feminism, it's very empowering and engaging and interesting to see these characters figure it out for themselves. We have mentioned to the Riot Girls, we have mentioned to music, we have mentioned to specific bands and artists, we have mentioned to specific zines, specific feminist influencers. So many resources throughout the course of the book that a young girl or a guy, anyone who's reading this book really can just like Google any of those things and be flooded with so many resources just because those things are beautifully, artfully sprinkled in. There's like mentions of poets and all kinds of great things. So many resources sprinkled throughout this book, and I really appreciate how influential that can be. I really appreciated the mother-daughter relationship throughout this book, and I especially appreciated the moment in the book where Viv kind of has a new understanding of her mom. I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially there's this moment where Vivian has this like epiphany about like her mom and everything her mom's done for her essentially, and it's just so beautiful and so touching, and I love it so much. Another part that made me like well inside, it was just so beautiful. I also really like Seth and Vivian's relationship. Seth is the love interest, and when I read this book I didn't necessarily expect a love interest, but I love that there was a love interest because Jennifer did a great job of showing how, one, not all guys are bad, which I will discuss a little bit more. Two, how just because you have a good guy doesn't mean he'll necessarily get it. And three, how to kind of like have these conversations and have these relationships with a feminist and open mindset was just so well done. This was such a beautiful relationship. There were moments where the characters would fight, which is totally normal, and like they would discuss their issues and talk it out. Seth would listen to Viv, and Viv would listen to Seth. Viv would educate Seth, and Seth would take that and understand, and he would get that he's never gonna get it the same way she does because he's never gonna experience it. He says some crappy things, but they talk these things through, and it's just such a beautiful, pure portrayal. There's a moment in the book where he says, you know, we're not all bad guys. You can't get that upset. And Viv counters and is like, you know what, I can get upset, and here's why. Yeah, not all guys are bad. I'm not mad about that. I'm mad that there are so many not great guys. There are bad guys in there, and it shouldn't be that way. And it's just so beautifully told. It's like really kind of over, like beating you over the head with how like overt and like obvious the phrasing is. So I can see a lot of people not liking it just because they're super feminist already. They've grown up feminist. This is not going to be anything new for you. However, what I appreciated so much about this was these girls who have grown up in this world where it's been so sexist and then that's been established okay in the community. And for them to kind of figure it out on their own and figure out how to fight back and talk about these issues in a civilized and meaningful manner and how to make a difference and how important it is to them, and they kind of figure that out for themselves, and it's a beautiful arc to see them figure that out. These girls are so well educated and they get it and they learn more by talking to each other. We're going to talk about a couple of things that aren't necessarily related to the overarching feminism theme. There's a couple things that I thought were dealt with really well in this book, and in a book for teens I think they're important to just talk about real quick. The first is sex, the second is alcohol. There is a moment where Seth and Viv are talking about previous sexual encounters. Have they, haven't they? They like had that conversation. Viv is like, you know, this is so uncomfortable, but she does it. And that's such an important conversation to have. And they talked about it in such a healthy and respectful manner, and they had the discussion, and I was really glad that that was there. Again, a really good like aspect of their relationship. The second is alcohol. There's a moment where the girls decide to use the Moxie name to have a fundraiser off campus, and while they're there, some of the girls are selling spiked lemonade. What I appreciated so much is that they didn't use a scare tactic to try to discourage teenagers from drinking. It wasn't like anything bad happened, but they had a very important moment where the girls are all at this event, and one of the girls goes up on stage and very blatantly says, okay, the event's over, we have to clean up. If you drank any of this adult lemonade, do not drive. Make sure you have a driver or walk home or let someone know. Everyone here is there to support you. No one wants to get hurt. If you need help, we will get you home. Just ask. It's just like this one line that's so minimal, but it was so important that it was there. Like, we don't need a character to get into a car crash or a character to have someone they know get into a car crash for us to understand this is dangerous and bad. We need more lines like this where we talk about, like, you know what? Just make sure you're okay and we care. And like, it's just this one line, but if more books just like threw in this one line, I think it would have such an impact. I'm super passionate about this, but I was just really happy to see that it was there. It wasn't like a scare tactic. It wasn't blown up. It was so subtle that so many people probably paid no mind to it, and it was beautifully executed. Honestly, I could go on and on and on about all the things I loved about this book, but I will stop right there. This book does come out today, September the 19th. I highly recommend you go buy yourself a copy. I really would love to see this book getting all of the praise and all of the love it deserves because it's so wonderful, and these are the kinds of books that make me excited about YA and about the literature teenagers and young adults are reading, because this is so impactful, so good, so informative, so wonderful. These are the things they need to be reading, and I really loved it. So go ahead and buy a copy. I pre-ordered a copy because after reading the arc, I just couldn't not own it, and I already am excited to reread it and tab it and just... I'm so excited. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. You should also subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Baby, I'll be here.